who is your guest there with you?
This is my foster failure. Her name is Chicken Nugget.
So cute.
She
Now,
is.
see, mine is just sleeping in the background and will not stay on my lap for these types of things.
I didn't know that she was going to actually join me, but it was pretty cool given that this book has a bunch of calico kittens and she's the only calico I've ever fostered. So it's nice to have a guest.
And is she your first foster failure?
No.
Ooh. Okay. How many
I've fostered
foster
for like 15 years and it's really hard to say goodbye. She ended up staying with us because she had problems with her pancreas. She had all sorts of issues, needed a lot of medical attention, lots of checkups and stuff. And I just didn't trust anyone else to kind of take her and do all that stuff. So she just ended up living with us. And that was her foster name, Chicken Nugget. So as much as we tried to put another name on her, nothing else stuck. And she's just a monster. Very large and very angry.
So obviously not getting into trouble that much where it's something you need to shorten, right?
Right. Right.
Well, on the books though, why we're actually having the interview, right? I mean, because we could end up talking about chicken nuggets and my cat Onyx the entire time, I have no doubt, right? And because we're big fans of the animals here. But tell us a little bit about yourself and how you first got into writing.
Well, I am originally from the Washington, D.C. area, and I moved out to Ohio and I never went back. So I am currently in the Midwest, which is different from what I grew up in, but it's pretty cool. I got into writing because my mom is a writer and she wrote her first book when she was pregnant with me, and she got published for the first time when I was in high school. It was a long journey for her, but it was a dream come true. And she's since written, I think, 13 books. And she would have a critique group that would come and meet at our house when I was a kid as I was growing up. So I always had authors in and out, all sorts of people with lots of ambition and chapters going back and forth constantly. And so I kind of grew up around it. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like she walked so I could run a little bit. So I had a backdoor view of the industry and kind of how it worked. So when I decided to write a book myself, I kind of already knew, okay, you have to really focus on your query letter. You have to pick the agents that you're targeting, for people who would be interested in publishing the kind of material that you're writing, that kind of thing. So it was really helpful to have that knowledge from her and that support system.
I'm shifting some of my questions now because, it's like, well, with that, what was the biggest surprise then with your first novel, having that type of background?
Like with writing,
or even just the whole element of having your first book. And because like you said, knowing that you've got to have a really great query letter. I mean, just even the business sides of it. I mean, were there surprises that came out, even though you've had this?
Honestly, yeah, because I saw so many people struggle, and so many of the people that were in the critique group try for years and years. And I was surprised that it ended up happening as quickly as it did. Was
this your actual first book? I mean, success right out the door then. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. I had, like I said, I had a really good support system. I started writing it not to get published because I didn't really think that was going to be possible. But I wanted to make my family laugh. And I got a lot of encouragement to continue. People were really enjoying the hijinks that my characters were getting up to. So I kept going and decided I wanted to try and pursue that route. And after a lot of rejection, I ended up finding someone who really connected with it. So I got lucky.
Oh, wow. How much do you think that influenced even your writing and the story? Because it's not a typical, it's definitely not a standard romance. There are romantic elements.
No, it's not a romance.
We were all talking about the revenge. I mean, you're quoting The Art of War with every chapter. I mean...
Well, the original story idea came kind of from a true story. So I was fired for my facial expressions. And that's where the truth ends. All the rest of it is completely made up, but that impetus was a true story. So from there, after I got over the frustration and being all indignant about it, I started to see the humor in it and started to appreciate how ridiculous that was, to not smile enough in an office setting and to have that like be held against me. So I just thought kind of making fun of that would be a good way to, I don't know, kind of get past it and make fun of it and, you know, share my thoughts on the world and on the workplace in general. Because one of the things, I'm an intense introvert. Like I just want to spend all of my time, in places where I'm comfortable, which is not around people that I don't know that well. And all the forced teamed bonding and stuff that they make you
Oh
do,
yeah.
it's just not for me. And I just, after a while, was like, cannot believe I have to do this. Like, I thought after I got out of school that nobody would be like, you know what, you have to play beer pong with us on the weekends. That's part of your job now. I just wasn't expecting it. And I thought it was just a really good opportunity to kind of make fun of that too and see if other people related to my
Oh,
hatred of
definitely.
that.
Yes. I mean, that was the thing for me, is that it was so relatable because the RBF is a real thing.
It is.
And
It
I
is.
had a boss who was constantly, when I moved into the position, was like, isn't this fun? Aren't you having fun? And I'm like, this is not, although I enjoy what I'm doing and I find it rewarding, this is not my definition of fun. I do
Right.
other
It's a
things
job.
for fun.
Jobs are jobs. We're there because they pay
Exactly.
us. We're not there because they're fun for the most
And
part.
I'd
I
be
mean, you
much
can
more
have lots
likely
of
to
reasons
have
to get
the
that.
afternoon off than to go and see whatever movie is playing with the entire team. I'm like, no, that's okay.
Yes. Yes. That is always what I thought. I was like, just give me the $20 and let me leave rather than
Exactly.
just stay and do this.
Yes. And especially when it spills over into your personal time, right? So
Yes. So I was trying to create a satire about that kind of thing. The book is ridiculous. It's silly and larger than life, and it's not meant to be taken seriously, but I am trying to comment seriously on some of these issues that people are facing. And that's why I'm making it as outlandish as it is, to kind of show the absurdity in the reality of it, if that makes sense. So
exactly.
to highlight how difficult it can be for women in the workplace, because I've never heard of a man being told, in the same situation, that he
Yeah,
needs to smile more and that he needs to just, his face needs to be more pleasant.
exactly. It kind of goes into that you can't win. If you're constantly smiling, you're not taking it seriously.
Yes.
And if you're not smiling, then you obviously have a problem. So
Yeah. You're bossy. You're not as assertive like you would be if you were a male. You're empty headed if you're always smiling. You're a bitch if you're not. So
right.
it is really, really hard.
But the other big component of all of this is the relationship between the three ladies with Vanessa, Jane, and Trisha, and that they face similar circumstances, and then they're all in the same boat of, okay, now what are we going to do? And driving for that element of revenge and getting even, so to speak, and having justice prevail. I mean, how big of an aspect of the story was that for you, and what kind of inspiration was even behind that posse, essentially?
I think writing about strong women is important to me. And every woman in this book is a strong woman in her own way. They're all very, very different and they all react to the situation differently. But I think the core of the book is the relationship between the three of them. They're bonding, they're coming to appreciate each other, find meaning in their lives that doesn't involve their jobs, which is something that I think has changed generationally. Because I think now we don't identify ourselves by what we do. Whereas I think people in the past used to have a job for 30 years and retire from that job. And that was what you were known for. And that's how you identified yourself. And now, I mean, people have jobs for a year or two, they move to another one. It's just not, it's not a career in the same way for a lot of people. And I wanted to highlight the family that you can create when you look for meaning outside of your office and outside of your job title. And I think the Vanessa's mom and her friends also tie into that. You have Vanessa's the calm in the center of the storm, and then you have these characters rotating around her that are all trying so desperately to help her. And that help is questionable at times. But yeah, I think the friendship between them is the core of the story. And that was the core from the very beginning. I really wanted to kind of explore that and how great it is to have female friendships and how we should try not to be competitive with other women, but instead to kind of build each other up.
And again, I thought it tied in so great with the overall themes and the nature of the book too, because of the problems at the workplace. And I have that core group through work who have, some of them have moved into other positions, other companies, and yet we can all still depend on each other. And you're right, it's such an important support structure, I think, to get through some of the ups and downs in the workday, that you can depend on them still outside of work.
I mean, that's where we meet our friends now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially if you have a soul-sucking job that doesn't give you a whole lot of time on your own, then the people that you spend your time with are your work family.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so hard to make friends as an adult elsewhere. So I think we tend to start to rely on those people. And I wanted to highlight that too.
Mm-hmm. And I was reading your bio in another interview, and you were talking about your several useless degrees.
Yeah.
But I mean, English lit and pop culture, again, I would think that would tie in perfectly with being a writer. Or are there other degrees?
No, I mean, I double majored in college in English and classical studies, minored in psychology, and I got, a master's in cultural theory. So no, I mean, it's helpful, but it's also not marketable exactly.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, being able to speak Latin, ancient Greek, like there's not real, I didn't pick these things with the idea of I should be aiming toward a specific career. I just kind of studied what I wanted to study and what I thought would be interesting. And looking back, maybe that wasn't the best choice. I mean, I'm happy I did it, but at the same time, like it didn't prepare me for a specific career,
But now you've got this wide scope of things that you can pull into your novel writing.
That's true. That's true. And grad school is ripe for a comedy as well. It is a strange environment.
Yes. And depending on what you study, there's so many different nuances to that, right?
Absolutely.
So if you are doing classics, you've got one certain group. If you're doing engineering, a whole other set of personalities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, I want to kind of go back to also because you've had such a unique history then of growing up with all these other authors and the different critique writing groups. I mean, were you able to pull on some of that directly when you were going through the initial writing process? Did it help influence some things or stay away? Did you lean on critique partners also, or?
I did to an extent, yeah. I got to see a lot of different writing processes up close. So some people, just go and finish a novel and then realize maybe halfway through things kind of went awry and they have to go back and fix that. Some people fix it chapter by chapter. So, I got to see what worked for some people and what worked for other people. But when it came to actually writing one myself, I don't know, maybe you could say I froze a little bit and just was like, oh my gosh, books are long. I'm writing, this is I'm at 50,000 words and I feel like I should be done, you know? So
Mhm.
it's just hard no matter what way you cut it. Um, having growing up around writers, you see people do it, but you also see how hard it is. So it doesn't make it easier. It just kind of emphasizes the struggle, I think, if that makes sense. I mean,
Yes,
it's not an
definitely.
easy process, especially making sure it all comes together. And I wanted to make sure that in this book, every single loose end was tied up. So
Mhm.
that involves holding onto a whole lot of threads as you go through. So yeah, it's daunting.
Well, what is your process like? I mean, are you sitting down? I mean, do you have it in your head? Do you see the characters? Are you a pantser, plotter, outline? Okay, you're scaring me with shaking your head with each of these.
Not any of those things. I write chapter by chapter. And I go back and edit the chapter, and then I kind of try and decide where the story is going to go. And I know the basic structure that you have to have. You know, you divide your novel into thirds or fourths, depending, and you have to have your climax and your denouement, and you have to have different things, the point of no return, things happen at certain points. And so that's basically the only outline I have. I know I've hit this point in the story. Um, did I hit it too early? Do I need to go back and kind of shore up the beginning or add some more clues? So I just look at that basic arc of the story as I'm going and just try and make sure that things are on time. So, you know, again, I don't know where it's going. With this particular book, I knew the beginning
Mhm.
and I knew that the end scene was going to have absolutely all of these characters in this building, in this confrontation. And I wasn't sure how I was going to get from there to there.
Mm.
So that was like Xavier's feet. Like, I don't know where that came from. Like, it's so
Thankfully, I
strange.
have not encountered that in real life. I know some guys who like wander around the office in slippers and stuff, but not quite to Xavier's extreme.
But you can imagine it, right?
Oh,
Like,
definitely, without a doubt.
but yeah, things like that, you know, when you're writing, they kind of come out of nowhere. And it's fascinating to see yourself do that.
Mhm. Well, writing chapter to chapter, I mean, you mentioned that you wanted to make sure that all the different threads were completely accounted for. How did you keep track of that?
Post-its.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Like 3x5 cards. I have a ton of them. And I would in the beginning, when I was trying to really get a handle on the story, since it was the first novel that I'd written, I didn't do this with the second one, but I had a 3x5 card with the name of every character on it and the things I knew about that character. Because as a writer, one of the things you have to remember is that every character in your story is working for something or going towards something. They have some sort of goal. Your villain's goal is at cross purposes with your heroine's goal. And all your minor characters have something that they're working toward and things that they want to accomplish and, you know, all of that. So you have to look at them as like a kind of a whole person. So I would write it down and then I would notice certain cards only had like the name on it. And I'm like, I need to think about this person a little bit more, think about what they are trying to get out of life, what their motivations are. And so I would just clip them all to my drafts and just try and make sure that was all being included.
Wow. Lots of organization with that many people. Yeah, you've got to keep that straight. And always amazing when everyone does that. But at least it's reassuring to know that keeping track element of it, because there's nothing worse when you get to that point in the novel and you're like, wait a second, what happened to this character? So we appreciate that effort.
Thank you.
Well, Anastasia, I want to switch over to what we call our fresh fiction facts. These are
Okay.
a series of random, hopefully light, quick questions, and just kind of answer with what comes to the top of your mind. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. What is your favorite writing fuel?
Writing fuel,
Like,
coffee,
is it coffee?
coffee.
Okay. What is your favorite time of the day to write?
Afternoon. I get my best writing done between like 3 and 5, I think. and I aim for a goal of 1,000 words a day. Um, Sometimes I'll get going and I'll get a whole lot more, but usually then that involves a lot more editing.
With whom would you want to be stuck in an elevator with?
Just out of anybody in the world.
Anybody, yeah.
Chicken nugget.
Well, you just said that you were an introvert, right?
I am an introvert. Yeah, we wouldn't have to talk. It'd be great.
Who was your first book boyfriend or girlfriend?
Oh gosh. That is a fascinating question. Probably nobody knows this series, but the series that got me to read was called The Secret of the Unicorn Queen. And it came out like when I was little. And it was the first book I read on my own. I was like 6. And it's about a girl in current time who tumbles through a portal into a world where there are unicorns and there's a war going on. She has to learn how to ride, learn how to fight and all this stuff. And there's a cute guy. And he's the love interest, sort of, because it's like middle grade fiction. But yeah, definitely that. I have the first cover framed on my wall because it was the first book I ever loved.
That is so cool. I love that.
There were 6 books in the series. They were like super short and they were each written by a different person. So I don't know what the circumstances were for that, but Secret of the Unicorn Queen is still my favorite like series probably ever.
Have you ever gone back to reread them?
Oh yeah.
Or do you think that would kind of disturb the magic of it?
No, yeah. I have reread, not recently, but I did read them to my son when he was trying to figure out like if he wanted to start reading. I was like, well, I got some unicorn books, and he was like, great. But I was like, no, you have to give him a shot. I got to meet the author of the first one time. She signed it for me. It was amazing.
Oh, wow. Oh, that just gives me chills. That's fantastic.
It's a great series.
What is the one thing that can instantly pull you out of a story, be it watching a movie or reading a book?
That's interesting. Wow. Anachronisms, I would say, probably. Like the first thing that comes to mind is the animated film Aladdin. I didn't love it, and that's why, because I couldn't stay in Agrabah with them because they kept talking about contemporary things. I like things to stay. That mishmash just kind of breaks up the narrative for me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It does, yes. With that, what is your favorite genre of books to read?
Comedy.
Comedy. Okay.
Yes. The real world is awful a lot of the time. And I feel like I need my most of my entertainment to be escapism because I have anxiety. I worry about everything. And I want to have entertainment that takes me away from that gives me a little bit of a break, lets me breathe. I do not like being emotionally manipulated. And I feel like some genres, country music, some of those things try to make me feel a certain way. And I don't like being told how to feel, and I get like indignant about it. So definitely escapist comedy. Happy endings are my jam.
That's been me the last couple of years. There's been enough stuff going on in the world, and
right?
I want the happily ever after. I want the comedy. You want that feel good.
Right. If I want to cry, I'll turn on the news right now.
Exactly. Definitely. What luxury item or unnecessary item can you absolutely not live without?
Unnecessary item. But that's interesting. I don't know if this counts, but I'm really addicted to my phone. I'm always losing it, but I always want to have it with me. Like I always, like I don't want to be connected, but I can't not be connected. So yeah, definitely my phone. It has cat ears.
Oh gosh. What's your favorite distraction when you're avoiding writing?
My fish tanks.
Really? What kind of fish tanks do you have? Freshwater, saltwater?
I have freshwater. I used to have saltwater, but the majority of saltwater is still wild caught.
Mhm.
So, you know, I'm trying to stick to the sustainable. I have 10 freshwater planted tanks, and I can get
Wow.
distracted at any moment with, oh, this one needs cleaning, or this one needs, you know, attention, or I
Are
have
they scattered throughout your house?
no, they're all in my office. My office is like a big fish tank. And I find that so relaxing. I feel like it's really zen. But in one tank, I have a bunch of guppies, and there are always new babies every morning. I just go and stare at the babies and watch their colors come in. And actually, my second book, Not Bad for a Girl, has a lot of, instead of kittens, we have fish. And that's the weird heroine quirk that that book has.
I don't think that's that weird. No, I grew up with fish tanks.
I mean, my husband thinks it's a weird pet. I mean, they don't like do much, they don't interact with you, but it's like seeing a whole different world. And there's just something so beautiful about it and relaxing. And I just really enjoy them. So, yeah, staring at my fish tanks or messing with them is definitely a good distraction for me.
Oh, I like that one. That one's different, but I like it. Yeah. What is a movie that you can watch multiple times and still enjoy it every single time?
That's interesting. Um, I don't get to watch a lot of movies or TV lately. My son is very sensitive to anything that involves blood, gore, anything like that. So it really does limit the kinds of things that we can watch. So um, I guess the most recent one that I've watched repeatedly is Pitch Perfect. I mean,
Mm,
good standby.
mhm.
Um, Also, I really enjoyed the Netflix series Wednesday,
Oh, yeah.
and we've gone through that one a couple of times too.
Mhm.
So there's, you know, something comforting about rewatching something, knowing what's going to happen, not having to have your full attention on it while you're doing something else, still be able to follow it.
Mhm.
So
What is something that you own a ridiculous amount of
besides fish,
besides fish? Yeah, sorry.
so I got way too many of them. Um, I don't own a ridiculous amount of craft supplies, I would say.
Oh, just craft supplies in general, or do you have a particular focus?
Um, you name it, pretty much. I do a lot of paper crafts. I paint. I cross stitch. I embroider. Um, I yeah, I make sculptures. I mean,
Mhm.
I try everything. I have to make a dragon in pretty much every form of craft art
Oh,
you can.
okay. It keeps you busy, right?
Really does. And it's a good distraction. Like if I have something on in the background or I'm listening to a
Mhm.
podcast and I have something to do with my hands, then it's a good zone out time where I
Mhm.
can just kind of decompress.
And still always learning something new if you move around from craft to craft, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Mhm. Well, Anastasia, tell us about your next book. You've mentioned it some, but give us the premise of it.
It's called Not Bad for a Girl, and it comes out in January 2024. And it is about a young woman who works in the technology field. She is a coder, and she has a unique gender neutral name. And after speaking her mind one too many times, she is transferred to a remote office. And while being able to work from home, she keeps her camera off. And because of her name, she's mistaken for a man. And at first, it kind of snowballs out of her control. She doesn't want to correct anyone. She doesn't want to call attention to it. And then she starts to see what it's like to be in that field as a man. She
Mhm.
gets kind of a backdoor view into what it's like to be part of the boys' club. And so it's an interesting look, I think, about how your appearance and your gender can impact your performance and the way that you're perceived at work. And, you know, chaos ensues. There's a lot of stuff that happens. Everybody's always looking for this man. And every time she thinks she's going to come clean, something else ridiculous happens that prevents it.
And again, this is one that's now on my TBR list because I work in the tech sector for my day job. Got a lot of people who call me Sam the last couple of years because of the pandemic, working from home remotely. And I do not turn on my webcam. I'm like, no, sorry, you don't need me to do that. So
it changes the way people treat you.
It does. Yeah.
And I wanted to
like you said,
explore
getting that backstage view of the guys club, it's like, okay, I can see where there's a lot of stuff there.
There really is. I mean, if you're 5 feet tall and everything you own is rose gold, then you're not likely going to get the promotion or be put in charge of a team of men, you know? So I wanted to look at that and how frustrating that can be. And again, look at the gender stereotypes of being assertive versus being bossy, being a leader versus being uppity, you know, and that kind of thing. So it's focusing on that. But again, it's satire, so it's ridiculous, but the ridiculousness just points out the truth in these kinds of situations. Hopefully women in the workforce can relate to it.
I have a sense I will. Yes.
I hope so.
Anastasia, our recorded portion is coming to an end, but before we jump over to our happy hour with our readers, tell us how our members can best keep in touch with you and follow all of your future work.
I am on Instagram. My handle is by Anastasia Ryan. And I'm also on TikTok, but I don't really know what I'm doing over there. TikTok is confusing, but also at by Anastasia Ryan. I have a website, anastasiaryan.com, and I'm also on Twitter, so same handle. So I'll be posting updates on when I'm going to be doing book interviews, these kinds of things, when my next book's coming out, that kind of thing. So I would love to keep in touch with you guys there, if anyone.
Definitely. And of course, whenever you swing through Dallas, even though you're an introvert, we're a friendly group and we would love to have you.
Yeah, you guys seem awesome. Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight, and we'll hop over now to the after hours party.
Thank you so much for the invitation.